Welcome to this edition of Hutchinson Economic Developments. My name is Miles Seppold. I serve as the Economic Development Director for the city and been doing that for a number of years. In this episode, I kind of mentioned it last time, we have a little bit of a different format, so we're kind of breaking this into thirds. We're going to do development news first, and that's just sort of economic development related projects going on around town, new business or remodeling or whatever. But the city may not be directly involved or is not directly involved. We don't do everything, so a lot of things happen by themselves, as they should. So we'll have development news, and then from there we'll go into EDA project updates. And these are the ones that the city or the Economic Development Authority, we are actually physically in there somewhere doing something. So that's more directly our projects. And then in the third segment, we'll have our feature. And this episode will look at the inside story of the landing and resolve the cliffhanger from last time and let you know how that all turned out. So on the development news side, and again, this is it's not city stuff, it's just things going on around town. North Maple Apartments, that's making progress. Mostly just a lot of site work going on up there. I don't know that they have footings and foundations in yet, but that'll be the next step there. So I'll keep you posted on how this develops. Dairy Queen remodel is mostly done. A little bit more painting to be done on this one. So they did, as you recall, they added that nifty tower on the corner and then new signage, and the big plastic spoon's been added. They're painting the outside of the building. They still have work to be done on the west side and the east side of the building. And then the inside's been remodeled. So a lot of tile, new tile, and very nice wainscoting tile there that they did. Looks pretty sharp. So they're open for business. Certainly go down and visit them. It looks very impressive. Really took a step forward, I think, with this project. The Thai restaurant is still coming along. I don't really have a specific update other than, I was told July, but maybe that's going to slide a little bit. But the owner, Hutchinson is next on his list. So I'm going to make some phone calls and I'll get a little bit more specific update for you next episode. Down at the Hutchinson Shopping Mall, new retailers coming in, so that work is going on right now. And when the name comes out or when I'm notified that I can share the name, I will let you know. But I can say it's Variety Store, and it will be a very nice addition to Hutchinson. Okay, moving on to our second segment now, which is the EDA project updates. So these are the ones that we are actually physically involved in, working on, and so forth. Big news item is the demolition of the Jorgensen Hotel. This is going to be postponed until the fall. And the inside story here is really that we were just on the verge of demolishing. I mean, this was just 1 or 2 days away from actually being demolished. But as a precaution, they did some additional testing to see what they could find out, with regard to asbestos. So they did testing, it came back positive, so additional remediation had to be done or has to be done, and it's significant that they need to do. And so as a result, the demolition cost of the whole thing went up a fair amount, and now we have to go find some additional grant funding to see if we can make this project work. So that's what I'll be doing over the next month or so, is filling out a large grant application, see if we can get the funding, and then hopefully we're going to queue this up and shoot for October or October-ish, around October, hopefully to get this thing demolished before the winter. And then the developer's telling me they want to launch into the new hotel this spring, so shouldn't be too much of a wait. I think the moral of the story here is just that redevelopment is hard. And there's just a lot of variables and a lot of unknowns. Sometimes you don't find out about things until you get into it some ways, and that's just what goes with redevelopment. So yeah, redevelopment is hard. The landing is moving ahead really nice. That's all on schedule. That should be opening late fall. went out and took some pictures just yesterday. So I talked with the site superintendent. They're estimating mid-July or so for finishing up the siding. Here's a view of the east side of the building where they have most of the siding on. It looks pretty sharp. A lot of the drywalling is complete inside. And then here's looking northwest. This is the south side of the building. Again, most of the siding is in place. So now most of the action is kind of going on the back side of the building, on the west and north sides of it. So exciting to see this kind of come into its final form. One thing they ran into, they are building a stormwater retention pond on the northwest corner of the block. And they did run in the course of excavating the pond, they ran into a little bit of petroleum contamination, contaminated soils. So nothing to worry about, nothing really big. You know, it's pretty standard for any kind of redevelopment projects that you're going to run into things like this. So here in the picture, they got it covered up and I circled it with a red circle. So they just got to haul that away and it goes to a special landfill, and really that's about it. So pretty minor, but just a little hiccup that kind of slowed the construction of the pond. So this is kind of where it's going. Most of that pond is dug out, and then they'll finish that up here in July, and then also be making improvements to Glen Street probably in July. So this will be coming together here pretty rapidly as we go forward. As I mentioned last time, the city, we're looking at doing a project on the street right next to Library Square, First Avenue Southeast, where we would be adding light poles, and then have lighting zigzagging across the street. So this is all kind of in the engineering design phase, and we're hoping to get that report back in the month of July. And then we'll start looking at the costs and start thinking about, you know, can we find a way to get the thing funded? And that's always the big challenge. So I will keep you posted on this here. Hopefully we can find a way to get this project to happen, because it would be, I think, a pretty nice addition to the downtown. Kind of along the same lines, River House is moving ahead really nicely with their project. They've got siding added on the south side of their building now. Looks pretty sharp. And in that space between the two buildings, they're going to cement that in and create an outdoor dining area. So they'll put in overhead lights, and it'll be a patio. There's going to be a black metal fence along the sidewalk on the front side of it, and it'll be pretty sharp. So this is going to move ahead fairly quickly, and I would imagine everything will be in place here by the end of summer. So a pretty exciting addition to downtown. They're going to put in some light poles, and they'll have lights zigzagging across that space too. So it'll look pretty sharp. Out at the Enterprise Center, our new company, Cannabis Chem Lab, is getting set up. They're almost ready to go. Hopefully in July they will be able to commence operations. What they do is they test cannabis products to make sure that they're safe, that they're not contaminated with anything, and that the various legal limits for the chemicals, that's all observed. So that's what they will be doing. So hopefully in just a few weeks they'll be moving ahead. And then same thing for Demos Materials, just working on getting set up, and we're hoping that they will launch in July. And I'll have more information about this here when it all happens. Last item on the update side is Guiding Light Child Care Center is open for business. So if you need child care slots, or you need or you know anyone else that needs child care slots, by all means give Guiding Light a call. You know, it's all new management over there, and it's basically a brand new child care center. So I mean, very nice facility. So if you or someone you know needs daycare, Guiding Light can fix you up. They have slots available. So that's kind of it for all the updates, the community updates, and then the EDA updates. So if you have any questions, happy to chat with you. Give me a call anytime. Stay tuned now for our feature segment, where we're going to finish out our story, looking at the inside story of the landing project. So stay tuned for that. Welcome back to Hutchinson Economic Developments. My name is Miles Seppold. I work as the Economic Development Director for the city. In this segment now, we're going to finish out our story from last time, where we were looking at the inside story of the landing. So this will be kind of part two. As I was putting this together, the story just got so involved. I mean, there were so many pieces of this that I had to break it up and put it over 2 episodes. So where we left off, and just kind of get you caught up, 2013 is where it all kind of began, when we were planning, and we did this Imagine Hutchinson downtown plan. And that's just kind of building our roadmap for the future and kind of working out on paper what we think might work for the downtown, and try to anticipate, what would develop and what would work well, what, would be challenging, and try to just look ahead, really. So we did that process. In 2016, the city purchased the old clinic building that used to stand on the north end of Franklin Street, and then tore it down that same year. And then 2016 to 2018, we had talked with some developers. Some had smaller projects in mind, which we were not as interested in because it really didn't meet the rule about having the highest and best use of the property. And then we had other developers on the other side that proposed projects that were bigger than we could accommodate at that time, because we just had 1 acre, we just had the east half of that block. So couldn't quite find a project that was going to be a good fit for what we wanted to achieve. 2019, the Federal Emergency Management Agency came along with a grant opportunity, and we spent a good chunk of that year working on the FEMA grant, got that submitted in early 2020, I believe. And then, as you recall, 2020, we got hit by the pandemic. And then the other piece was that FEMA said, okay, you guys can get the grant, but we cannot award the grant because the county doesn't have a current hazard mitigation plan in place. So that caused us to go into kind of a waiting mode. We lost, pretty much a whole year just waiting for that to come into place. So that's the cliffhanger. That's where we left off last week. So how does this all get figured out? So 2022 FEMA grant got approved, which was good. The county they updated their hazard mitigation plan that got adopted by all the cities in the county, and we're back in business. So FEMA awarded us $513,000 to acquire 3 houses that were in the floodplain of the Crow River, the 100-year floodplain. And then we had to come up with $171,000 as the local match. But during the pandemic, this is kind of in the category of, well, nothing's ever easy. During the pandemic, housing values shot way up, and I mean they shot way up. So here on this table, I'm showing you, we had 5 properties that we were looking at. 3 of them, A, B, and C, I labeled them A, B, and C. Those are the ones that we're able to purchase with the FEMA dollars. And you can see what the appraisal price was in 2019. And then we had to get them reappraised in 2022. And the values of all these things just shot way up because of the pandemic. And so, we were looking at maybe $760,000 or so to purchase these properties. All of a sudden, we're over $1 million. Looking at all the properties together, we had to spend 35% more than what we initially planned for property acquisition. So that was a bit of a headache. Fortunately, luckily, FEMA had a provision within their program that they could make an inflation adjustment to our grant. So they added another $162,000. That boosted the total grant to $675,000. We had to increase our local match, but we found a way to make that happen. So we are back in business. So 2023, then we go to work buying and selling properties. So the red box on the right there, that's the original medical facility building that was there, that lot, which is 1 acre. We had arrived at an agreement with a developer that they had planned to do something on that site, and we thought, okay, that's a good fit. Let's go for that. So we sold that 1 acre lot to the developer, and then at the same time, we're working to buy properties on the west side of the block. So the 3 in the yellow box there, those are the ones that were purchased with the FEMA dollars that we were able to get. FEMA covered 75% of the cost of acquisition, demolition, stabilizing the site. we had to come up with 25% locally, but that set the stage for us to acquire the properties. I labeled them 1, 2, and 3. So it was in December of 2022 then that we bought the first house, which was next to the river. And then in January, the next month, we purchased house number 2. And then we're talking with property owner number 3. That was a little bit more of an involved deal because he owned 3 properties. He owned his house, but then he owned the 2 rental properties that I labeled there in blue as 4 and 5. So we had a little bit more work there to kind of work it all out, how we were going to do that, and then how we were able to fund that, and the city was able to find some funding to help make that happen. So ultimately, by the middle of 2023, we have all the houses purchased, which is a huge step forward, big project. One of the rental houses, we actually were able to convey that to the Housing and Redevelopment Authority here in town. They picked it up, moved it to a new lot, refurbished it, and then sold it. So, I mean, it was the nicest of the 5 lots, and I mean, nicest of the 5 houses, I should say. And so we were happy that that one was able to kind of get recycled. The other ones were in various conditions that were really not practical to refurbish them. I mean, just to bring them up to date would have cost more than they were worth. And so there's a point there where you just can't really do it economically. The developer, they had come up, the developer that we sold the lot to, they were proposing what they called Hutch Uptown Commons. So this was their initial concept of what that would look like, but it was apartments, pretty familiar layout. It's the ground level parking and then 3 levels of apartments up above. That's what they were looking at doing. And the site plan is pretty similar to what we landed with today. So here you can see the building is on the east side of the lot, and then parking on the west side, and then the ponding on the northwest corner. One of the challenges is that there was an alley that runs north and south on this lot, and there was fiber optic cables running up that alley and then underneath the river to serve the north portion of Hutchinson. So initially we thought that that was going to be a constraint. We didn't know if we could get around that or if the cables can be moved or whatever. So that was sort of a constraint that kept the building on the east side and then the parking and everything else on the west side of the lot. Right about this same time, the developer came back with a new concept, which we liked a lot better, more upscale, uptown kind of a look. So this is kind of how Hutch Uptown Commons evolved. This was going to be a 46-unit apartment, and this one's only 3 stories. So I mean, it's, I think, parking on the main level and then 2 levels of apartments up above. So 46 units, combination of 1 and 2 bedrooms. So that's kind of where that was going. And then at the same time, we had to start doing some work to get the lot ready for development. So one of those things was to relocate a sanitary sewer line that ran across the lot from west to east, kind of down the middle. So I mean, it had to get moved. So ultimately what happened is that the city came in and we were able to relocate that sanitary sewer line around the perimeter of the block. So we did that. And then at the same time, we're working our way through the planning process. So there's lots of steps that need to happen there. The developer needs to put together a site plan to show us how they think the lot's gonna be developed ultimately and how things are gonna lay out, where the pond is, where the parking is, where the building is, all that stuff. And then we would have to replat, because we have a total of 6 lots there. Technically, buildings can't cross a lot line, so you have to replat everything into 1 lot or a couple lots, so you're not crossing lot lines and stuff like that. And then you had to put in place, for this particular project, you had to do what's called a planned unit development, and that's just a special set of planning rules. So we had a whole bunch of steps we had to work through administratively to get this to be ready to redevelop. So 2024, we're looking at realigning that sanitary sewer. Originally, we were planning to redo Glen Street, Franklin, and First Avenue and just repave that. That turned out to be not necessary, which was good because that saved a lot of money. But the idea was that the city would be coming in, we would build the pond and get all that stuff done first, and then later the developer would come in and then do their project. So we were going to get everything ready. And then included in that was cleaning up the riverbank. There was a lot of, sort of undesirable trees and brush there that we thought, well, we got to get rid of that and then bring in some big rocks and stabilize that riverbank. So that was another part of the project. So we thought, well, we'll get all of that stuff done in the first half of the year, and then in the second half of the year, the developer can come in and start working on their project. So that was the game plan. Late September 2023, the developer came back and said, hey, here's another concept. What do you think of this? So this is getting even more upscale, very impressive looking thing. And going back again to a bigger building. So this would be parking on the main level, 3 levels of apartments up above. So, okay, looks good to us. We think we're rolling down the tracks. In October of 2023, we removed the trees. So got a contractor on board. This is kind of the before picture with the trees that were there. This is kind of hard to look at because you like trees, but all the trees removed here by the end of October, and then the house is just sitting there out in the open. So quite a switch. Then we move into demolition. That was in November of 2023. We got a contractor on board, had 4 of the 5 houses demolished and removed. The 5th house, as you recall, that went to the HRA and got recycled. So by the end of November, we've got the lot pretty well cleared off, and the stage is set for development. And then, like I said, the first half of 2024 was going to be pond, moving the sanitary sewer line, cleaning up the riverbank, doing the streets, all that stuff. And then second half of 24 would be construction. So, unhappy news, this was a curveball that came in right at the last minute. We had a development agreement in place with the developer. And the development agreement, that's just between the city and the developer. It kind of just outlines who's doing what, what's the timeline, all these types of things, kind of work out all the details. The development agreement we had in place was set to expire, though, at the end of the year, end of December of 2023. And if the project wasn't moving ahead, the lot that we had sold to the developer for $1 was going to revert back to the city. So we're talking with the developer. He's still super interested in doing the project, but then he said, I can't do it right now because of the pandemic. Material costs were way up. Cost for lumber was pushed up, and interest rates were higher. And just the higher cost, it really just kind of ruined the business model for the project. So he wanted to wait 2 years until he began construction. And he wanted the new development agreement, let's just reset the clock and we'll wait 2 years and then I will build this thing. At the same time, we had another developer coming around that was also very interested in the site. So at the EDA, we're debating what's the best way to go. Can we stick with the current developer and just do a new development agreement? Or should we just update the request for proposals, reopen the process, and just try again? So ultimately, that's what was decided. We said, we want to get this project going. I mean, it's been years and years and years. We need to get this thing going. So 2024, put together a new request for proposals and sent that out. And as you recall from last episode, a request for proposals or an RFP, that's basically just a help wanted ad. It's like, here's a lot, here's an opportunity, here's what we will do to help make this happen. You, Mr. Developer, send us the ideas. And what do you see going on this site? And how would you do it? What's it going to cost? So that worked pretty well. Through that process, we got 3 proposals that came in. Developer A, they came to us and said, hey, we will do a 40-unit co-op. So this was going to be a 5-story building. They were going to start right away in the summer of 2025, so we like that. This was going to be a different thing, though, because this would be something where people came in and bought their units. It would be 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom condominiums, basically, that people would come in and buy. And then there would be an association fee that they would pay to maintain the site, maintain the grounds, push off the snow, all that stuff. So that's option A, is the 40-unit co-op. Option B, another developer came along and said, hey, we will do an apartment project, 64 units, market rate, combination of studio apartments and 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom apartments. So we were looking at this one. Okay, looks decent enough, but that's developer B. And then developer C came along and they said, hey, we've got an idea for a 79-unit apartment. And again, this would be a mix of studio and 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom apartments. We would get going in 2025. This is what we think we can do. So we debated and discussed, and ultimately developer C was the one that we chose, and that's what's getting built right now. So this is Granite City Real Estate from St. Cloud. They're the developers. They managed to find a way to get 2 more units in there, so it's actually 81-unit apartment building. And here we go, 2025, we finally get to the finish line. The thing starts construction, and here we are, 2026, end of this year, this thing is going to be done. And so just look at this. This is all the pieces and parts and events that went into doing this project. It was 9 years, almost 10 years from concept to hitting the finish line. And you know, we got hit with a pandemic, we had high interest rates, we had material costs that went up, property values shot way up, we had to go get a grant, had to have the grant adjusted, had to come up with local match, had to do site cleanup. I mean, just an endless list of things to get done. This is why I say redevelopment is hard. It's hard. There's a lot of pieces that go into these things. But the reward is that we've got a $20 million project happening in downtown Hutchinson, and we're going to have 81 families living in downtown Hutchinson. That's going to be a big win for the whole community and just a huge improvement in this neighborhood. It's just going to be phenomenal. So we're super excited about this. So that's the story, the inside story of what goes into the Landing redevelopment project. If you have any questions about any of it, or you want to talk about it, give me a call anytime. I'd love to chat with you. And that's it for this edition of Hutchinson Economic Development. So we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for tuning in.